Good morning, everyone. I'm Lauren, and this is your virtual tour of Amsterdam's canals with the Lovers Canal Cruises, brought to you by Tiqets Awakening Weeks. So for those of you who don't know, Tiqets Awakening Weeks is a 6-week celebration of the reopening of museums and attractions around the world. The venues participating in Awakening Weeks have worked day and night to reimagine their experiences and introduce new hygiene measures to make it safe for you to visit again. And they're also rolling out the welcome mat for those of you who aren't able to travel yet with online experiences like this one. So before I hand over to our presenters for this morning, there are a few logistics I'd like to take care of. If you have any questions for our presenter, you can submit them through the Q&A box in the lower section of the Zoom window. There'll be a Q&A at the end of the tour, so please feel free to send us your questions and we'll try to answer as many as possible at the end of the session. You can also vote up your favorite questions by giving them a thumbs up, and then that way we know which of the questions to answer first. So as some of you may have realized, this is a Zoom webinar and your camera will not be on, but you can use the chat to communicate with your fellow attendees and the speaker. You can share where you're joining us from or your reactions during the session by using the chat. Make sure that when you do use the chat, you select all panelists and attendees when sending your messages so that we can all see them. If you find you have any technical difficulties during the session, you can use the chat to send a message to just all panelists and we'll try and help you out as soon as possible. If it's an audio issue, then you can just leave and rejoin, and that's usually an easy fix. Finally, we're going to be recording this presentation and we'll be sending the recording to all of you in the coming weeks. And so without further ado, I'm very happy to hand over to our host for this virtual experience, Anthony, and he's going to transport us to the world of Amsterdam's canals. So Anthony, can you please take it away?
Yes, perfect. Good morning, beautiful people at home. I hope all of you are relaxed, having your tea, breakfast. Now, as all of you have already noticed and heard, my name is Anthony. I'll be your captain for this virtual tour. Now, I've been working at Lovers already for 5 years, but I started as a host and as a steward, and I worked myself up towards being a captain. And it's the greatest decision I've ever made. One of the best jobs you can have here in Amsterdam, because Amsterdam is my office. I'm always outside. So Amsterdam is a very historical city. All the buildings you actually see are monumental. So which means that when you buy a house here, you're not allowed to change anything, neither on the outside nor the inside, except your own furniture. But for now, we are sailing on the Eastern Dock. Now, Eastern Dock is one of the first and oldest shipyards of Amsterdam. Before Rotterdam became the main haven of import and export, Amsterdam had several shipyards where we did that, and Eastern Dock is amongst the first. Now, every single houseboat you also see here are amongst the first houseboats ever. Now, straight ahead here in front of us, you will see the Sea Palace. The Sea Palace is the biggest floating Chinese restaurant of Europe. It's a replica of the Jumbo in Hong Kong, but the one in Hong Kong is slightly bigger than this one. Now, this one was built and designed to hold in between 800 to 1,000 Asian people. But of course, during its grand opening, only Dutch royalties and Dutch celebrities went on board. And I have to tell you guys, Dutch people are a little bit heavier than Asians. So around 700 people, it started to tilt, it started to sink, and they had to take everybody out. So it has now a maximum capacity for 600 only. Now, of course, there's one difference between Amsterdam and Hong Kong. In Amsterdam, we have brackish water. Now, brackish water is a combination of sea and fresh water, which is, of course, less dense than just seawater. That's why if you're planning to build any floating restaurant by any kind, you build it only on seawater. It's as simple as that. Now, the funny thing I find about this restaurant is everywhere in Amsterdam, you will see geese and ducks, except here. They magically disappear. I think it has to do with their menu, ladies and gentlemen. Baking duck, that's their specialty. Now, we're about to sail to go in the old city. And we're gonna pass underneath the kicker bill, the frog's leg. That's the name of the bridge we're gonna pass underneath, which is one of the many lifting bridges we have in Amsterdam. Now, in the city center itself, we have about over 250 bridges. But in totality, with north, south, east, and west, we have over 1,500 bridges. Now, some people call Amsterdam the Venice of the North because in terms of bridges, Venice has more. Well, they are sadly wrong, guys, because in Venice, there's only around 400 bridges. And as I just mentioned, we have in Amsterdam total over 1,500. So if there are any Italian friends at home, sorry, guys, but Venice is the Amsterdam of the South. Point. Now, the houseboats you guys see, you will see a lot of them throughout the entire tour. We have a total of 2,500 houseboats here in the city center, and each is unique on its own. Now, in the past, they were discovered by the hippies, and back then, they found out it was very cheap to live on the water. But I can tell you guys right now, if you want to own one of these houseboats nowadays, it can end up costing you in between 400,000 and 2 million euros. Till this day, the most expensive one sold. Now, that's just the purchasing price. You also have to pay for the mooring permit, where you have to locate your houseboat. And only for the location, you pay in between 100 and 300,000 euros. So yes, welcome in Amsterdam. At the moment, we are sailing on the old Schans. It's one of the old defensive ditches excavated in the past. And you will see a lot of warehouses in this part of the canal. Now, of course, you might have heard of the East India Trading Company and the West Trading Indian Company in the past. Well, here we had the East India Trading Company. And we used to transport a lot of pepper. Pepper was back in the day as expensive as gold or silver, and it had to be protected. Later on, before this bridge here in front of us on the left-hand side, you guys will see the old pepper house. It will be a building with, let's see, black shutters and iron bars in front of the windows. Now, because back then pepper had to be transported all the way from the east, and it had to be kept dry along the way, pepper was very expensive. I mean, even till this date in Holland, we say that there are certain things that are as expensive as pepper. Peper duur. So in a moment on the left-hand side, you guys will see a very beautiful house. It has black shutters and iron bars. That is the old pepper house. We're also passing through the Jewish cultural quarter. Now, during and after the Second World War, we had a lot of Portuguese Jews and other Jewish people that came and lived here in Amsterdam, and they started cutting diamonds at home. So the area we're passing now here makes part of the Jewish cultural quarter. Now, funny thing, in a moment, we're going to pass through the Anthony Sluice or the Anthony Lock. Yeah, it's named after me. No, all jokes. But we have about 16 of these locks here in the city center. In the past, we used to use them to keep the water level in check. So we never have a problem with the tide here in the city center. But nowadays, we use them more to keep the canals of Amsterdam clean. With high pressure water, late at night in between 2 and 4 a.m., we flush everything that is thrown into the canals, even from the tour boats, all the way out to the Northern Sea. which makes actually the canals and the water here of Amsterdam almost drinkable, almost. The water is actually pretty clear. Now, after this lock, after this sluice, on your left-hand side, guys, you'll see in a moment the flea market. Now, the flea market is one of the oldest markets in Amsterdam. It exists already for more than 130 years. Now, I got my own story about the flea market because before I became a captain, I used to work in a store that's called Hema. I don't know if you guys know it, but it's really nearby. And I know this about this market. They sell most of the stolen bicycles of Amsterdam. True story. The most petty crime we have in Amsterdam here are people stealing bikes, especially crackheads and junkies. On average, in between 50 to 70 bikes a day. Now, I always say, if your bike gets stolen, don't panic, don't worry, just come back to this market, guys. You will find your bike, but of course, spray paint it in a different color, and you can buy it back for a very reasonable price. And we call that here recycling. And behind the storage containers you see here behind the market, you can see how the market looked like about 70 to 75 years ago. And the way it got its name, flea market, because in the past, people used to put all the clothes, the second-hand clothes that they used to sell on the floor, on the ground. Now, of course, if you're passing by with your dog or any animals that are passing by, of course, what do the flea do? They try to search for a worm. So, of course, they went into the clothing. Therefore, it's named flea market. Now, in a moment, we will come onto the Amstel River, which is the only natural waterway of this city. Every other canal we already passed through, and we're going to pass through or dug out, man-made. This is a man-made city. Now, for those who have been previously already in Amsterdam, and you have walked around, if you have paid really good attention, you see a lot of buildings leaning. We call them the crooked houses. Now, the reason why this happens is because this city is built on a swampland, which means the ground here is very soft. Now, to build buildings, you have to build them on wooden poles to make sure that the ground is a little bit more firm. Now, of course, after a while, wood will start to rot, and that's the reason why you see certain buildings leaning. Now, to give you a really nice example is here on the left-hand side, you will see about 6 of them in a row, ladies and gentlemen, leaning towards one another. And we call them the 6 dancing or the 6 drunken houses. Now, why drunken, you may ask? Because it looks like all of them are leaning towards the Irish pub Mulligan's, which ironically enough is the only one standing straight. Unbelievable. I always make a joke, as you can see at the hotel, depending which room you book, you may end up in a different room or in a different building. Now we're going to turn the boat around. We're going to go towards the center part of the Amstel River. Now, guys, I can tell you that Amsterdam is not only amongst the most expensive cities when it comes to owning a house or purchasing a house, but also when it comes to parking. Like depending the time and the place, you can pay in between 3 to 7 euros per hour. Now, I can also tell you, it's also very difficult to park your car here because each year about 10 cars end up in the canals. No joke, guys. Now, there are certain canals that you will see some iron profiles placed in front of the cars. Now, in the past, these were built by insurance companies because it was cheaper to place those iron profiles instead of reimbursing people for their insurance money. Now, I do have one word of advice. It's personally from me that in case you end up with your car here in the canals of Amsterdam. Now, remember that the canals of Amsterdam are only in between 2.5 to 3 meters deep, except the River Amstel, which means that you won't actually sink. So my advice to you is, of course, to get out of your car, go sit on top of your rooftop, remain on top of your rooftop and act as you cannot swim. Now, the reason why I say this, if you do that, it will be a rescue mission. Rescue missions are done by firefighters, paid by the government, free for us. But if you swim and get out of the canal, they need to call a service truck to take your car for you out of the canal, and that's a service which you need to pay for. Think about it. Now, straight ahead of us, you will see the blue bridge, the Blauwe Brug, which is one of the last defensive bridges of Amsterdam. And what does mean a defensive bridge? Just look very carefully to the details on the bridge, and you will also see some iron rings on the inside of the bridge. Now, if you pull these iron rings, the bridge will collapse, which means that no boat can travel through, and you can end up protecting what you need to be protected. So this is one of the few defensive bridges left in Amsterdam. Now we're coming on to the center of the Amstel River. Now, there are two other bridges that I want to talk about here. And the first one is the smaller one here on the left. The smaller one here on the left is called the Walter Susskind Bridge. Now, Walter Susskind was a very important man throughout the Second World War because he helped a lot of Jewish families, especially Jewish children, to hide. So in his honor, they named this bridge after him. And the whole area also behind this bridge also makes part of the Jewish cultural quarter. Now, also on the left-hand side, you see the Hermitage Museum, which is only a smaller version of the real one in St. Petersburg, Russia. Now, in the past, this was kind of like a home for the elderly, especially elderly women. But after that, they rebuilt it and refurnished it, and they made it into a museum, which has collection of all the old tsars, emperors, and kings, but mostly about their jewelry. So the crowns and everything they used to wear in the past. Now, the most famous bridge I want to talk about is the one coming up now. This one is the Skinny Bridge. The Skinny Bridge is the most famous bridge of Amsterdam. It has been used in several movies, such as James Bond, Diamonds Are Forever, and also Ocean 12. But what you guys don't know is known as the Bridge of Love. For those who are sitting at home, you're with your lover, your spouse, your couple, it is said that when you sail right underneath this bridge and you end up kissing each other underneath the bridge, I mean right underneath the bridge, you will end up staying together forever. Now, if you are already married, you have nothing to lose. But if this is a new relationship, guys, I would think about it first, because forever is a damn long time. Pardon me for my language. But it's coming up. Don't be too hasty. Wait for it, wait for it. It's like you almost hear the drums. Counting down, 3, 2, 1. Show each other some love. Earlier, I already mentioned the locks we have here in the city. In front of us, we have the Amstel locks. These are the biggest locks of Amsterdam. And these locks, we still use them also to let some cargo ship pass through. But enough about the River Amstel, guys. I want to take you actually towards the Herengracht, the Gentleman's Canal. And we will get there in a couple of minutes. But the reason why I want to take you there, because the Gentleman's Canal, the Herengracht, is the most elegant and expensive part of Amsterdam. I won't say much now. Later, I will explain more about it. But for now, just wait for it. Now, guys, as I said earlier, the canals of Amsterdam are in between 2.5 to 3 meters deep, and us captains always make a joke about it. We always say it's 1 meter dirt and mud, 1 meter water, otherwise we cannot sail, and 1 meter of those stolen bicycles I told you earlier. Yes, there's a special company in Amsterdam that fishes yearly in between 10 to 15,000 bikes out of the canals. As you can hear, it's a lifetime job. Normally they start really early in the morning. I tried to see if I could, search for that special boat so you guys could actually see how it worked. But they have kind of like a detection system inside their boat, which they can use to detect metal. And they have a special crane on the boat, which they use to grab all the bicycles from deep within the canals to keep the canals actually, sailable. Because there are certain moments that certain boats, if they are too deep, they can get stuck. So Herengracht will be the canal across the Walter Suspen Bridge on the left-hand side. Now, as I said earlier, Herengracht, the Gentleman's Canal, is the most elegant and expensive part of Amsterdam because the houses and buildings you will see in a moment sell in between 10 to 20 million euros a piece, ladies and gentlemen. No joke. Herengracht is actually built by the rich for the rich. Now, throughout Amsterdam excavation, there were three main canals, well, actually four, but three of those canals were the main canals. You have the Prinsengracht, the Prinsencanal, the Keizersgracht, which is the Emperor's Canal, and the Herengracht, which is the Gentleman's Canal. Now, the Prinsengracht was built for the workers that were working actually on the canals. The Keizergracht was built for, let's see, those who were working in accounting, lawyers and such, with a better job than those working on the streets and the side, and Herengracht for the rich. So take a really great look around. Beautiful buildings here. At this part at the beginning, they sell around 10 to 15 million, and after the first bridge, they start going up in price. 10 to 20 million. Now I'll give you guys one example of one of these houses that sold, if I'm not mistaken, it was 5 months to about half a year ago. And it will be on your right-hand side after this bridge. You will see a very beautiful sculpture of St. George killing a dragon on top of an elephant head. Well, a colleague of mine searched it and he told me that the house sold about 5 to 6 months ago for 16 million euros. And it's this one right here. You see how beautiful that sculpture is. Now, since I heard that a lot of you are here in Amsterdam, if later on you're looking for a more luxurious hotel, I have a special offer for you. And there's a hotel here on the left-hand side. And the hotel here is the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, one of the most renowned and expensive hotels in the world. But I can tell you guys that the presidential suite here will cost you 5,000 euros per night. Just know that your breakfast is not included. Welcome again in Amsterdam. Flying Enterprise, Torbekkenbocht. But for the moment, in a moment, on your left-hand side, you will have one of the most beautiful views from the water side, which is the Reguliersgracht. You will see 7 of these stone arch bridges in a row. And it's only viewable from the water side. It's very, very beautiful. Just look how beautiful. Oh my God. Wow. It's unbelievable. Now, when I'm doing a dinner cruise, most people find this very, very romantic. Oops. Now, guys, I can tell you that in the past, people pay taxes on the width of their step cable. Of course, the wider your step cable, the more taxes you pay. That's why if you look at this part of Herengracht, the Gentleman's Canal, you will see the biggest, most elegant, and most beautiful houses of this city. Now, in the past, people were so rich, they used to compete amongst each other about the most silliest things. And I'll give you one small example. You have to look in front of the houses and you will see staircases. Certain houses have staircases going one way and certain houses have staircases going both ways. Well, apparently from history, the ones who have been going both ways have a little bit more money than their neighbors because they could afford it. And because nowadays these houses sell in between 10 to 20 million, you don't find regular people living here. No, mostly you will find insurance companies, investment companies, bankers, lawyers, liars, and other criminals within the legal system because only they can afford it. Thorbek is vrij, kom maar mee. Now, one thing you guys also know, because I don't know if we're gonna reach it within the time of this tour, but you have to know Dutch people are amongst the smartest here on the planet when it comes to either being cheap or saving up money. Now, earlier I said that in the past, people pay taxes on the width of their step cable. Of course, also the smaller your step cable, the least taxes you have to pay. Now in Amsterdam, we have about 3 of the smallest houses, which will not come on the video today, but I will tell you guys anyways about it. And these 3 houses were actually purposely built to avoid paying taxes, but are amongst the biggest houses in Amsterdam. One of them has a total of 440 square meters. But a step cable is so small that this guy doesn't have to pay taxes like those who are living here in the Herengracht. So now on the right-hand side, you guys can see the iron profiles placed in front of the cars that I mentioned earlier that insurance companies built so they don't have to reimburse people for their insurance money. And this part we're traveling through now is called the Golden Band. The Golden Band is the most expensive part of this city. Even go.
Lying here voor de Leidse langs.
Anthony, shall we start getting going on some of our questions that we've got from the audience?
Now, there's also one difference. Yes, tiempo.
We might be having some technical difficulties, folks.
All right, guys, so there's also one more difference between Amsterdam and Venice. In Amsterdam, we have streets next to our canals, and in Venice, the houses go straight down in the canal. Here to this small canal, here on the right-hand side, you have a small piece of Venice and Amsterdam, where the houses go straight down into the canal. It's one of the few parts we have in Amsterdam that the backside of the house go actually immediately into the canal. Alright, we may make it in time that I can still show you one of the small houses in Amsterdam. Let me see a little bit faster. We may make it in time. I can tell you guys already, this house has a width of only 1 meter 20. But as I told you earlier, it's only the step cable that is small. There's a doorway through the house itself, and this is the house that I said earlier is amongst the biggest ones in Amsterdam, with a total of 440 square meters. Now, after this bridge, it will come in a moment on your right-hand side. One of the smallest houses in Amsterdam. All right.
So I was mentioning earlier about one of the small houses in Amsterdam, and it's this one here on the right-hand side. This house is one of the smallest ones in Amsterdam, as I mentioned earlier about, in the past, people paying taxes depending on how wide their step cable is. Now, this house was purposely built to avoid paying taxes. It has a width of only 1 meter 20, but it has a total of 440 square meters. Now, as it goes towards the back, it starts widening up, but you wouldn't tell from the entrance actually. Now, also, if you look at the top of certain buildings, you will see hooks because the houses in Amsterdam are so small. The staircases inside of the houses are so small that it's almost impossible to move your furniture when you're moving houses. So the hooks you see on top of the cable-stone of the house, those are used to move all the furniture that people are actually moving when they are moving houses. So it's always good to pay attention if you see one, because there might be a sofa or a piano dangling above your head. So in a moment, after this bridge on the left-hand side, you guys will see the old Bartolotti house. It's a very beautiful Malaysian building. It has red bricks and it's outlined with white stripes. Now, this building is already for more than 450 years here in Amsterdam, and it served as an inspiration to the Heer Kuipers, whom designed both Central Station and the Rijksmuseum. That's why they actually look alike. So this one here, this is the old Bartolotti house. And this building served the Heer Kuipers as an inspiration. And he was the one who designed both Central Station and the Rijksmuseum. I do have something that I have to tell you guys. For those at home, if you guys have ever tried the Amstel or Heineken beer, then I can call you a true local. Why? Because you have tasted our canal water. Yes, Amstel beer, hence its name, is made with the water from the Amstel River. And Heineken beer is amongst the few beers in the world that you are not allowed to change the recipe. So wherever you buy Heineken, it will forever taste the same. The recipe is not allowed to be changed. Now we also we just passed underneath the 3 bridges of the 9 streets here at the Herengracht. Now for those who like small boutiques, small shops with personalized items, this is the place to be, guys. It's especially built for that purpose, actually, because you have a lot of just, regular tourist shops throughout the city of Amsterdam. But if you go towards the 9 streets, you will have more personal items, and they're really, really beautiful. Watch it, watch it, watch it. Now, in a moment on the right-hand side, you guys will see a house with red bricks, red shutters. This is the first house made out of bricks here in Amsterdam, and you will see the year on top that it was built. Now, for those who know about the Amsterdam flag, it's the black flag with the 3 red crosses in it. And those 3 red crosses stands for the 3 plagues that beset the city: fire, water, and the Black Plague after World War II. Now, in the past, there were a lot of houses built just out of wood. And Amsterdam went through a big fire. After that big fire, about 20% of Amsterdam burned down. So they started building brick houses. So this one was one of the first brick houses, 1590, built here in Amsterdam. Flying Enterprise, Ride van de Heren, de Brouwersoprichter Haarlemmer. When you guys hear me talking Dutch like that, it's me using the communication system to communicate with the other boats to let them know that I'm going from one canal to the other one. Flying Enterprise, Brouwers, Haarlemmer. Now guys, the boat we're traveling on right now, the Flying Enterprise, is actually one of the longest tour boats in Amsterdam. This one is almost 25 meters. Now later, the way I need to make my turn is I need to use, well, I don't need to, but it's one of the options that I have to use the wood that is in front of me to turn the boat on. And therefore I can make sure that my back end has enough space to turn. So I'll show you guys in a minute. Yes. This boat you guys are seeing passing by is a very special boat because it's made by recycling the plastics and every trash they actually pick out of the canals. They make this boat from, and they use it to continue their work to keep the canals of Amsterdam clean. So this is a very special company, a very nice one. Fijne dag en graag gedaan. There is one attraction that I would love to show you guys. We're gonna go back on the Eye Canal. Yeah, I said it like that, Eye Canal, guys. A lot of people confuse this and call the Eye actually a river, but the Eye is actually amongst the widest canals in the world. So we're gonna sail towards the Eye Canal, and there's one attraction that I would love to show you guys. I don't know if you guys know about the Amsterdam Lookout Tower, but in the past, before it became the Amsterdam Lookout Tower, it was the headquarters of the old company Shell, but now it's the ADAM Tower, the Amsterdam Lookout Tower. Now you have a restaurant all the way at the top that turns for 360 degrees while you're dining. But the attraction that I want to show you is on top of that restaurant. In a moment, you guys will see 3 red swings, and these are the highest swings of Europe. And it's almost 100 meters high, and you will end up swinging with your feet over the edge, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. So, all right, we are now on the Eye Canal. The building I mentioned, the Amsterdam Lookout Tower, is straight ahead across the canal in front of us. I'm gonna try to make the boat go slightly diagonal so you guys can see these swings. I think nobody's on them yet, so you won't see people swinging. I was hoping that you might see people swinging. But yes, you will end up swinging with your feet over the edge, guys, so it is pretty exciting. And I can guarantee that most of you will feel some butterflies in your stomach.
Anthony, thank you so much for this amazing tour. We're already coming up to the end of our hour, but it has been an absolute treat seeing Amsterdam's canals with you. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, sweetheart.
Perfect.
Yes, I can.
It's been a real treat seeing all of this with you. Our audience has absolutely loved this tour of Amsterdam's canals. Thank you very, very much for joining us, and thank you to our audience for joining us. We, as you all know, this is part of Tiqets Awakening Weeks, and this has been your Amsterdam Canal Cruise virtual experience. If you're based in the Netherlands already, you can also experience the Netherlands Awakens Week in person, and you can join wonderful activities like this one. For more information, you can visit tiqets.com/blog/awakening-weeks for information on all of our Awakening Weeks, including this one. Thank you to Anthony for a very special and spectacular presentation, and thank you to our audience for being a lovely audience. We encourage you to post about your experience on social media and to share how much you love this experience. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a wonderful day further. Bye-bye. Thank you, Anthony.
My pleasure.